Awaken the Dragon is a ceramics festival and a community project surrounding the last two remaining dragon kilns in Singapore. It's a non-profit project founded by Post Museum, an art collective, and myself. And like all stories with dragons, I promise you this one also will have flames and fire, because that is what transforms the raw material of clay into ceramics. Ceramics such as the mugs you drink your coffee out of, the tiles that we walk on, and even the toilet bowl that we sit on every day, you know. So where does this magic of clay and fire and heat takes place in? It happens in what we call a kiln. In this case, we're talking about a dragon kiln because of its resemblance to the mythical creature, not just in length and form, but this also spits out fire like one. Well, kind of. Dragon kilns always look like it's breathing out fire, when really it's just grabbing oxygen from the outside atmosphere so that flames can grow bigger and hotter inside. You'll see that all dragon kilns are built on an inclined slope, with the head at the bottom, where fire begins, and then slowly moving up to the top, where the tail of the dragon is, which is also the chimney. These structures can go up to about 100 meters long. The ones that we have here in Singapore, since we only have two left, the longest one, called Guan Huat, which is also the sleepy dragon, is about 42 meters long. This is inside the belly of the beast. You'll see that from the image, there's some slight undulation on the roof. This happens over time. After each firing, there's contraction and expansion, and so it's a natural occurrence. And every time this happens, it becomes more and more like a dragon. You'll also notice, and to me this is my most favorite part, is that it's pretty much a true tunnel. Whether 42 meters or 100 meters long, dragon kilns have nothing holding it up other than the physics of an arch. No pillars or beams, whether inside or outside. And it's because of this design, up to today, it's probably one of the most efficient ways of, and effective ways of firing ceramics in mass. Take Guan Huat, for example. In its heyday, Guan Huat used to be able to fire up to 40,000 pots at one go. If you imagine when Singapore used to have 30 over dragon kilns all around the island, and this is dating since the late 1800s, and if each kiln was firing about 40,000 pots a month on average, we were producing a lot more than just what the locals needed. We were supplying to an outside market, exporting them as well. And this is not just our products, but we were also supplying and exporting our craft. Yet so much of this information and this thriving industry that we had in ceramics was unknown to me. And you know, I'm a ceramics major, right? So definitely much more to everyone else. But you can't really blame us, because as the ceramics industry declined, so did the presence of these magnificent creatures. With only two dragon kilns left, one is the sleepy one called Guan Huat, and the other one right next to it is called Tao Guang. And having Guan Huat in slumber for 30 over years, maybe it's not so embarrassing for me then to confess to you now that as a potter, even I didn't know about our dragon kilns in Singapore until, ironically, I had left Singapore. I went to Australia to do my degree in ceramics, and that year in 2008, I happened to walk into the library when they were throwing out magazines, old magazines, and this is the ceramics library in the university. That one magazine that I picked up had on its front cover Singapore Dragon Kilns. And when I checked the date, it was a 1979 edition. And this is an overseas magazine. So that year in 2008, I decided that if they were still around, I'm going to be damn sure to find them. And so during the holidays, I went back home, and true enough, thankfully, they were still there, and they still are. Back then, it was in this beautiful place, in this thick, dense jungle of Jalan Bahar, west of Singapore, just nearby here. You can have a look later. But it no longer looks like this. But okay, so anyway, back then, it was surrounded by nature, and definitely lots of pottery, with eagles swooping above, fireflies just engulfing the atmosphere at night. It was a magical place where the two dragons lay. Unfortunately, in 2011, after I graduated from my ceramics degree, I returned to the same space, the exact same place. My heart dropped, and it's like it just felt really troubled when I realized that the same space was being in transition. Trees were being uprooted, land was being flattened. to make way for an eco-park. Then we also heard of rumors, heavy rumors, that once the 2 Dragon Kilns lease were going to end, so might the Dragon Kilns themselves. So Post Museum and myself, we decided at that time it was very urgent that we should do something while we could before the lease ended. Because too many times, places, sometimes even people and their stories just disappear because we forget about its existence, or we just forget about the story altogether. So we didn't want this to happen to the dragons, and definitely not to the heritage in this craft that we have in Singapore. So we began Awaken the Dragon with workshops. As long as you had 15 people or more, we would come down to you wherever you are with our clay, with our story. And we'll tell you then about how dragons arrived in Singapore, what they did for us, and how they are still relevant, very much relevant to us today. During this process, they would also make a pot each, engage in the arts. But they weren't just making with any type of clay. We got volunteers to dig up clay from different parts of Singapore, and we got them to make their pots out of local Singapore clay. This meant that while they were engaging in this process, they were also in the most tangible way connecting with the land. And for the first time, we could say, hey, I'm making something with Singapore, and with my own bare hands. So this experience, we tried to bring it to as many places around Singapore, all across the island, reaching to participants of all ages, race, creed, religion, and to get as large a cross-section of the society as possible, to all types of communities, such as homes for the aged, offices, banks, void decks, even in the parks, libraries, community centers, even hipster cafes we went, they were not spared. All these little communities slowly became one, until we reached about 3,000 over participants and their works in the first festival. What was really nice, or maybe even wonderful for me, is that a lot of participants after each workshop would come forward to us, our volunteers, and say, hey, can I help in any other way? I want to be a bigger part of this project of Awakening the Dragon with you. And so they did. They offered any help they could, such as the cleaning, the packing, the organizing, a lot of manual labor, the carting of bricks, chopping of wood, because this was no small project. Even the firing of the kilns and donations, because it was pretty much a ground-up initiative that we started. And this was all throughout, all the way through the end, which was the opening of the festival. This was at the opening night. And they weren't just local friends and volunteers that came to help. Quite a few of them flew down from other countries, their own ceramics community, such as Australia, the United States, Thailand, Manila. They came down without asking for anything in return, just so that they could be part of this community that we were growing. And one of these special friends is Ian Jones. He's a potter, wood firer, and he builds dragon kilns in his hometown. He started to advise us right from the beginning on how to fire it, how much repair to do, because no one's used it before. We don't even know if it was usable at the time, but he gave us a lot of confidence with his support. And he also told us exactly how much wood to use. So how much wood exactly is 4 tons. Yet contrary to what a lot of us think, it was a completely carbon neutral firing, because 100% of the wood came from industrial parks, furniture factories with their offcuts, demolished sites, and even the national parks like Botanic Gardens, where they would take their wood every other day, their waste wood, bring it to the incinerating plant and burn it off as rubbish. So we said, no, bring it to us instead, so that we can use it for our firing. After the festival's firing, 3 days and 3 nights of non-stop firing, we eventually got all the works out and painstakingly, with the help of our volunteers, redisplayed at the National Museum from one end of the museum to the other, in the same way it was fired in the dragon kiln, from one end of the dragon to the other end, so that the public and the participants who took part could actually come and see for themselves the works and how they have transformed. And of course, at the end of it, they could also take it back. This is one of my favorite photos, because you can see the pride beaming out of her face. And I'm sure the pride is not just because many of them, it was their first time exhibiting at National Museum, but when they saw the amount of work, the magnitude of the project, they realized how integral they were in that project, in Awakening the Dragon. So, Awaken the Dragon is a metaphor for awakening the community, But to me, maybe because I'm a potter or a ceramic artist, I think the most beautiful and poetic part of it is that without the people, without the participants and their individual efforts, their little pots, we would not have gathered enough mass in the dragon kiln for the temperatures to rise high enough so that clay can actually transform into ceramics. In other words, the dragon kiln would literally not have been able to be awakened without the people. Thankfully, it wasn't just the people that we moved. The media came to us as well, like the BBC. I mean, I'm still shocked that we had so much attention. Taiwan News Channel, local papers, TV station, radio stations, they all started to cover us. Even overseas magazines started to write about Awaken the Dragon in Singapore as, strangely, a quiet movement of the people. We definitely did not start out that way. We did not expect it to be such a big thing. But maybe there was some truth in it. Because that year, after our festival had ended, and a few months just before the lease of the Dragon Kilns was going to end, the authorities came to us. And they said they'd like to champion the cause and the extension of the kilns, not just one kiln, but both Dragon Kilns. And it wasn't just for 1 or 2 months or 1 year. It was a 3 plus 3 plus 3 year extension, in total 9 years. A first time for all of us here in Singapore that we even heard. Yes. Thank you. It was the first time we actually saw the people move and change the minds of the authorities. So yes, we're very proud of that. So for me, the thing is, we shouldn't be too surprised, because for so long we've been asking ourselves, I'm sure a lot of you still remember all these debates about what are the roots of Singapore, where are they, how do we find them, what's unique about Singapore, how do we connect with the land? When all this while it's been right there, places like Pulau Ubin, the Dragon Kiln, the clay beneath our feet has been there waiting for us to discover it. So for me, Awaken the Dragon is that one example of how beautiful and wonderful a discovery can be when we do it together. Thank you.